Okay, everyone, good evening, and welcome back to our Tanya class. We are now in chapter 12. We began chapter 12 last week, but we left off more towards the beginning of it. It's a lengthier chapter, so let's jump right back into it from the beginning of the chapter. It's on page 47. Till now, the Alter Rebbe discussed the two categories, or the four categories: the perfect and imperfect tzaddik, the completely and incomplete rasha, and now he's going to discuss who the Beinoni is. Okay, and the intermediate man, the Beinoni, is he in whom evil never attains enough power to capture the small city. If you remember what the small city we learned in chapter 9, the small city is the body of the person, so as to clothe itself in the body and make it sin. It never has that dominion. The evil never attains that power. That is to say, the three garments of the animal soul, namely thought, speech, and act, originating in the klipa, because we're talking about the animal, the human soul, do not prevail within him over the divine soul to the extent of clothing themselves in the body, in the brain, in the mouth, and in the other 248 parts, thereby causing them to sin and defiling them, God forbid. Let me read those few lines again, because there's a nuance here. They do not prevail, like right in the middle of it, right? Do not prevail within him over the divine soul to the extent of clothing themselves in the body. Well, that is to say, the three garments of the animal soul, namely thought, speech, and act, originating in the klipa, do not prevail within him over the divine soul to the extent, and here I want to point out those words, to the extent of clothing themselves in the body. In other words, in the Beinoni, the animal soul, what we're going to start calling the human soul, it interchanges. Animal, human, it's the same soul. That soul does overpower the godly soul internally. How it feels, how it thinks, and so on. But over here he's saying, it do not prevail over him, over the divine soul, to the extent of clothing themselves in the body, in the brain, in the mouth, and in the other 248 parts, because the animal soul doesn't overpower the godly soul to the extent that it would actually enclose itself in the thought, speech, and act of the person. That it has no power. The Beinoni will never let the human soul overpower the godly soul to the extent of actually enclothing itself in either a thought, a prolonged thought, a spoken word, or an action.
Well, if it doesn't pass the thought phase, you cannot go to the
Correct. Usually true.
doesn't that
I mean, you could do something without thinking about it much. You could do things without really,
an unconscious thing?
not an unconscious, not that you're conscious of it, but you're not thinking about it too much. You're just doing it,
But a Beinoni can't lust.
He won't let it happen, no.
A Beinoni can't lust in his heart.
He could. In his heart he could.
But he could.
He has lust. He can't control what his heart likes.
Okay, but then
He controls what his actions will do, what his mouth will speak, and what his mind will think.
Okay, so let's separate this from mind. Can he lust? He can't lust in his mind.
He can't think about the lust. He won't think about it. He won't allow the thought to linger in his mind. No.
So getting back to
But it'll always be a fight. He'll always want it, but he'll never let himself do it. Yeah.
getting back to my question, this saying
This who? The Beinoni, yeah.
I mean, do we know anybody that's in pain? He said, yeah.
I knew some people that were Beinonese, yeah.
But, I mean, these are somebody you would think is a tzaddik, but it's not.
He looks like a tzaddik. He behaves like a tzaddik, yeah.
But it's not.
But he's not a
So
tzaddik.
probably what, I mean, 1,000?
No, I don't even know if there are 1,000.
So-
Probably not.
So if God wants us to be faithful, that's his goal.
Yeah.
He doesn't be
Very successful, right?
So, this is, I was thinking about that. It's just like you have a son and you tell him, you know what, I want you to be a doctor and an attorney. I want you to go to the best school. I want you to have the most beautiful Jewish girl. I want you to be financially successful. It's like,
Well, let me ask you. You're a parent. Here, let me throw it back at
I
you.
wouldn't ask that for my son.
Hey, one second. Would you tell your son, I would like you should never lie? Or would you say it's okay for you to lie once in a while? What would you tell him? If your son came over to you and asked you, Dad, I'm growing up, I want to be able to, I want to know how to conduct myself. You're my father, I want you to give me guidance. Would you allow me to lie once in a while? What would you answer him?
I mean,
Of course you would say no, you should never lie.
I mean, but there's certain times when I think it's better to lie. I mean,
I'm not talking about when you're allowed to lie. I'm talking about, I'm not talking
No,
about,
no, yeah, but I wouldn't tell him, you cannot make any mistakes, or you cannot, it's, what I'm trying to tell you, the bar is so high.
Your bar for your son is also very high.
It's not even 1%.
Why? Why do you say that?
Because he's a human being. He's gonna.
So I'm asking you again, if he asks you, if your son asks you, do you think I should spend my time exercising all the time, not all the time, but a normal amount of time, and spending my time reading and educating myself, and never lying, and never being dishonest, and never being not nice to other people? You probably would say, shake your head yes to all those things.
Right.
Okay. Now, is that a high bar? It's a pretty high bar, you would
It
say.
is, but it's nothing compared to this. This is
Well,
like impossible.
Why is it? Do you think it's possible for your son to follow all the? But I'm asking, do you think it's possible for your son to follow such rules, such rigid rules that you put on him?
Yeah, but it's not like you're asking, you have to go to the best school, you have to take 3 degrees.
Sure you would. You would tell him, I'd like you to get into the best schools. You wouldn't?
Not 3 degrees.
What's 3 degrees?
I want you to be a doctor.
To get 3 degrees.
3 degrees from the best school. I mean,
I'm not sure who does ask their kids for that, but
I think it's such a high
in other words,
bar.
yeah.
You would expect the result is going to be what we have.
What if you go out in the other direction? Like, what do you want for your son? For instance, if you ask me, I have 2 sons, what do I want for my son? That they should have peace of mind, and that they should not be gratuitously cruel to anybody ever. And never feel that they should be, or to have so much anger that they would have.
But I want to tell
But let me put it in these words.
You're going to make mistakes. You're going to.
Why do you have to tell him that?
Because they're human.
Okay, fine. So tell them. It's not a mistake. But when you say that, but that's a misleading statement. Are they mistakes? Are they mistakes?
No, yeah.
Well, if they make mistakes, that's something. I'm not talking about making mistakes. That's not called a mistake. I think this is you're misspeaking. Those aren't mistakes. What you're referring to are not mistakes. Oh, you're going to fall and sin. You're going to do stupid things. Most people are going to do stupid things, right? Right. Correct. Exactly.
But I would tell him, you would never make a stupid thing.
I would tell him, I hope you don't.
Try not to.
That's right. Try not to. Exactly. Try not to. What do you mean try not to means you're never going to do it. If you try hard enough, you won't. No, but it's not in other words, are we serious when we say that to our kids or we're not? That's the question. When you say to your kids, I hope you'll never make a stupid decision in your life. Do you mean that? Okay. So it's a high bar. It's a very high bar. That's it. So don't say it to your kid if you don't think it's realistic. Why are you telling your kid things that aren't realistic?
It's better to tell you're going to make a mistake. You're going to make mistakes in life.
That's not mistakes.
Well, you're going to make bad decisions.
You're going to make bad decisions. Yeah.
The most important thing is that you learn from it, you correct it, and you actually do.
And guess what God tells us? He says there's something called tshuva. Every Yom Kippur you come to shul for that purpose. Every Rosh Hashanah you come to shul for that purpose. God's being pretty kind with us, to be very honest with you.
I agree.
Okay.
So to me, if I was.
But one second, but let me finish the statement. But there's no question God is going to say, this is what I want from you. Why shouldn't he say that? How could he not say
So
that?
how does he measure success?
That's only, I have no idea. I don't consult, he doesn't consult me on that. And
I mean, if I tell my son, I want you to do all these things, and he doesn't do it, I wouldn't feel good.
of course you wouldn't feel good.
Yeah.
But you know why you don't feel good? No, one second. It's an important point there. It's an important point. You know why people feel bad? Because of what's the word? Unrealized expectations.
Unrealistic.
No, unrealized expectations. Unrealistic expectations. If you don't meet your unrealistic expectations, you don't feel bad. When you don't win the lottery, do you feel bad? No, because you never had an expectation to win the lottery. You never had an expectation. So you don't feel bad when you don't win it. But when you have an expectation and it doesn't happen, then you feel bad. You're frustrated, you get upset.
Rabbi, you're telling me that even you and all the rabbis cannot achieve that goal.
They can't, they just don't. Whether they could, but they don't. It's a hard goal, there's no question. If you want to know, there's no question it's a very hard goal. There's no doubt about it. So I'm with you. It's an extremely hard goal. Hard goal,
If you measure the success, I want everybody to be like that, and only 0.000%.
Okay.
of the class.
So let me answer you.
If I'm a teacher, and all my students fail, I think that's that.
No, let me tell you. This is a good example you just gave. With this, I'll finish and we'll move on. When you're a teacher, you want every kid to get 100 in the test, right? You want them to get 100. They got 95. Do you feel like you're a failure? If every kid in the class got 95, you say, wow, that's a total failure. Not even one kid got what you wanted. But that's not true, because 95 is a pretty good mark.
No, I wouldn't feel bad for 95.
Okay, because it's not an all or nothing game. It's not an all or nothing game. If they all failed, you would be upset. Yeah, that's total failure. Even if they got 65s, if 100% of your students got 66, you'd say this is not good. So here's what I was going to say. And I said this last week, and we're going to get there. A Beinoni is not an all or nothing. It's not a sum total game. It isn't. No, I don't mean that. Even the in between level. If I can get through this chapter, I promise you will be satisfied by the end. I will, because it's an important point. And I'm happy you brought it up, but I got to read it out in the process. We got to go one before two. We can't go. Let's read, and I promise you'll get your answer by the time this chapter is over.
I think what you say is like it's black and white, but there is infinite color in the middle.
There's no black. It's black and white, but it's gray is. But 95 is also good. 95 is not
That's the
bad.
point. The Beinoni is an infinite color of gray that can be near to the white and near to the black.
Emes. But then there's the ultimate Beinoni. And God wants us to be the ultimate Beinoni. Let's read. Okay. Only the three garments of the divine soul, they alone are implemented in the body. In other words, only the neshama gets to take control of the body, being the thought, speech, and act engaged in the 613 commandments of the Torah. He has never committed... He has never committed, nor ever will commit, any transgression. Neither can the name wicked be applied to him even temporarily for a moment throughout his life. This is an important sentence or paragraph. What's he saying over? He has never committed? What does it mean? That if you're saying he has never committed, that means anyone that ever committed a sin can never be a Beinoni again. What does that mean? Obviously, the Alter Rebbe doesn't mean that a person who ever sinned could never be a Beinoni again. So what does he mean over here? He never committed. That's past tense. What happens if someone, when he was 15 years old, committed a sin, and then he felt bad, and then from then on, he went on to be a Beinoni? Is that bad? That's a Beinoni, no? So why would he? This is a very high bar. Never committed a sin. That means once you commit a sin, you can never do tshuva again and become a Beinoni. Of course, that's not true. What the Alter Rebbe means over here is that when the person, it's very possible he made a sin. It's very possible he did a sin, maybe even more than one sin. But then he says to himself, "This is unacceptable. It's not good. It's not what God wants. It's not what my soul should. It's not good for the soul. I don't want to ever separate from God. I'm going to do all the mitzvahs properly the way He wants them. But the fact that I sinned, I'm going to do tshuva for that sin, and my tshuva is going to be so real that if I were to analyze that person in his current state of where he is right now spiritually, he will never do a sin. He will never do a sin. Now, the fact that he says past tense, see, he says of it two things. He has never committed, nor ever will. That means like this, his tshuva, his repentance is so powerful, it's real, it's for real, that it wipes away the past, and he will never do it again. How do I know he'll never do it again? How do you know he'll never do it again? You don't, right? Okay, but a Beinoni, we know that he'll never do it again. It says he will never do it again. Never commit a sin. So what does it mean? If I'm a Beinoni today, so in other words, if you're telling me that the definition of a Beinoni is never did a sin and never will do a sin, how do I know when he's a Beinoni? Only when the day he dies. When he dies, I can measure, did he ever do a sin? No. Okay, he was a Beinoni. But before he dies, could you ever term him a Beinoni? Because he's saying he'll never do a sin. That means, how do you know he'll never do a sin? So how could you ever consider him a Beinoni? The answer is very simple. It's not simple, but this is the answer. When you look at this person, when Hashem analyzes that person, his current state of neshama, of the way he sees himself in this spiritual state of reality, precludes him ever doing a sin. I want to give you an example. Will you ever throw this is a ridiculous example, but will you ever punch your son in the face and break his teeth? Can I say for certain that you'll never do that?
No.
You can't? You can't say that? You could say that.
No.
What? I'm serious. You can't say that? So let me say, why do you say I can't say that? I know you. I know what you are, what kind of father you are, and I can say right now, this is a person that will never punch his kid in the teeth. In your current reality, the way you are now, I can say that for certain. This person here is incapable of punching his kid in the teeth. Now, could you go nuts, or could something happen to you in the future and you can change your existence from the way you are now? Then you're a different person. Then the person that's standing here now is not going to do that. This human being will not do that. In other words, in your current state of understanding of what a relationship with a father and a son is, you will not do this. Could I say that pretty much for certain? The way you are now, I know you're not going to do it. If something happens in your life and you change and you completely transform yourself to become something different than you are today, that could happen. But this person will never do it. Do you understand what I'm saying? Does that make sense? That makes sense, okay. You could say that with tefillin. If someone looks at me and says, this rabbi ever going to miss tefillin? Well, if I look at you and I say, would you ever eat on Yom Kippur? Would you ever rob a bank? Would you ever put on a mask and take an AK-47 and walk into a bank and rob the bank? Could I say that? No way. Moses will never do such a thing. Would that be a correct statement? No. In your current state, I could say that with certainty. I could say that with certainty. This person will never do that. That's a pretty certain statement. Now, if you were to ever rob a bank, we would have to analyze what happened to you after something happened to you between today and the moment that you did that. But this person today would never do that. That's a pretty correct statement, I think. It's true spiritually as well. It's true spiritually. Is there a mitzvah that you could say, I'll never violate that mitzvah? I'm asking you a serious question. Could you identify one mitzvah and say, this mitzvah I will never violate?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which one? Give me an example.
Maybe steal.
You'll never steal? Okay. No, I'm not asking the past. I'm talking about the future.
I wouldn't steal anything.
So if God looked at you today, and they would have to analyze Ben and say, is this a guy that could steal in the future? He would have to say no, right? That's it. There you go. God looks at this Beinoni today, based on the repentance that he did, and the place where he is right now, he is not going to sin anymore. That's what this means. This is an analyzation of a current, present state of this human being. Is he going to sin? Is he a sinner? Is he going to sin? Is he capable? He's not going to sin. He has reached a place in his life where he is not a sinner. Now, could things change? Yes, we'll talk about how a Beinoni can end up sinning and how. And by the way, even a tzaddik could end up sinning if he's not careful. Even though a tzaddik has no temptation to sin. So how would he sin if he has no temptation? We'll talk about all that.
So if you think the Alter Rebbe decides to define the Beinoni as a type, an intermediate man,
Yeah.
as opposed to just describing Beinoni as a state.
It's a type and what do you mean as type? What's the difference between type and state?
Because one objectifies the man as an intermediate man, as an entity, a Beinoni entity, while the other describes the state of being a Beinoni, which is fluid.
Which it is fluid?
It could be a Beinoni and then commit a sin.
But then you're not a Beinoni.
My point, you're in the state of being a Beinoni.
Are you?
But what I'm saying is a Beinoni is in the state of being a Beinoni.
Where God can look at him today and say he will never do a sin.
But he still has the potential.
Everyone has potential. Even a tzaddik has potential if he corrupts himself. In other words, where he corrupts himself.
It's more of a lot of a syntax issue. It comes down to if it's not a permanent state, it's not an unchangeable state. It's what they call immutable.
So I'm asking you again. Could I say about him that he won't punch his kid in the teeth? Is that a correct statement?
Remember what you said, in your current state.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. No, in his current state, he won't do it in the future. This human being is not capable of punching his kid in the street. If he's a new human being, maybe, yeah. This is not going to happen to him.
Yeah, but he's only capable of not doing it in the future if he remains in the state.
That's right. Right, exactly.
Which is why I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't want to bury it.
But the point is, it's a reliable statement. If someone looks at me and says, is this person ever going to sin? Sure. God would never say about you and me, or maybe you, yeah, but he will never say about me that I will never sin. He will never say that. On the Beinoni, he will. What's the difference between me? Right now, I'm not sinning. I feel bad of all the sins I did. So why would God say that I'm willing to sin in the future? Because I'm not in the state of a Beinoni. Even though right now I'm not sinning, and I feel bad for every sin I did. I really do. But right now, I am not a Beinoni. And God could not look at me and say, this guy is not going to sin. On the Beinoni, he could say it. In his current state, he's in a different place. He's not a sinner anymore. That's the difference. It's not what you're doing right now. It's where your state of soul and perception and the way you conduct yourself spiritually, he's not going to sin. Now, if he goes and something happens, this person I can look and say for certain, this is not a sinner. He's done sinning.
So what prevents somebody arguing? What is preventing you
From doing what? Nothing's preventing me from becoming a Beinoni. Nothing's preventing you from becoming a Beinoni.
Well, I'm more distant than you.
Maybe it's a little harder because you're not used to it, doing as many mitzvahs.
Why is so different?
Because it's a struggle. Do you think it's easy to be a Beinoni? You just told me how hard it is.
Does a Beinoni once a Beinoni?
It's not easy for an Orthodox Jew either.
Is a Beinoni? It's still very hard for them to maintain that. Yes or no?
It's a struggle, yeah, yeah. But you'll see. Let's go further.
The point, guys, what happened to all of us? Even though we know that maybe taking, a lot of sugar is bad for you, how many times, you're gonna, do something to yourself and take a big part of kasher, ice cream and took everything. This is not good for you. Come on.
Let's move on.
It's good for you, but you do it anyways. It's bad. But again, something happened to us, like he says. In the Korean stage of it, there's a moment that you feel bad and you do something wrong.
Well, that means that you were. In other words, if it's so fluid, with today you're in, tomorrow you're not. Every day you're regretting what you did. You're not a Beinoni. Then you're not in the state of a Beinoni. No, then you're not in that state. Yeah. That's exactly what a sinful person is. He sins and he regrets it all the time. We read that in chapter 11. Yeah.
It's a thing where you wouldn't even think about it. But if it's not done, forgive it.
All right, let's go further. However, so that's when we're talking about his behavior, his thought, speech, and his actions. However, the essence and being of the divine soul, which are its 10 faculties, the human's mind and his emotions, do not constantly hold undisputed sovereignty and sway over the small city. Except, in other words, this person does have very, very self-centered passions and desires and wants, and he's not perfect in the inside. His soul is still very, very attracted to very, very mundane, materialistic things. Except there are times for the Beinoni that he doesn't even desire it. It's like a tzaddik. Except at the appropriate times, such as during the recital of the Shema or the Amidah, the prayer, which is a time when the supernal intellect is in a sublime state. It says that in time of davening, the supernal intellect, meaning the Chochmah of Hashem, is in a higher state of reality, in a sublime state, and that has an effect on the human being down here too, which he continues. And likewise below, this is a propitious time for every man when he binds his Chochmah Bina Das, his Chabad, intellectual faculties, to God, to meditate deeply on the greatness of the Blessed Ein Sof, his the infinite God, and to arouse the burning love in his right part of his heart, because that's where the neshama is, to cleave to him by virtue of the fulfillment of the Torah. He should have this passionate desire for Hashem and to want to have a connection to Him. And how do you have a connection to Him? Through the fulfillment of the Torah and its commandments, out of love. This is essential. This is the essential aspect of the Shema, the recital of which is enjoined by the Torah, and the blessings which precede and follow it, which are a rabbinical enactment. The latter, meaning the blessings, being the preparation for the fulfillment of the recital of the Shema, as explained elsewhere. What's Shema? Shema is about loving Hashem. That's the moment you reach a powerful love for Hashem. How do you reach that love? By contemplating God. When do you contemplate God? Where is this topic of contemplation of God present? In the blessings before of the Shema, and that's the preparation. So when the Beinoni is engaged in that moment of prayer, he's on a different level. He's connected to God on a level where his human nature and traits are asleep, so to say. They don't bother him. He doesn't feel any temptation to anything but God at that moment. At such time, the evil that is in the left part is subjected to and nullified in the goodness that is diffused in the right part, from the wisdom, understanding, and knowledge in the brain. Where does the love come from? It comes from the brain. The brain thinks about the greatness of God. It produces a powerful love in his heart. And the love is so strong that it puts to sleep any other temptation. And that's during davening. which are bound to the greatness of the Blessed Ein Sof, right? However, after prayer, when the state of sublimity of the intellect of the Blessed Ein Sof departs, the evil in the left part reawakens, and he begins to feel a desire for the lusts of this world, of the world and his delights. He's back to square one. He has a desire for everything that's, mundane and materialistic. Yet, he's still a Beinoni, and that's the key here. Yet, because the evil has not the sole authority and dominion over the city, over the body, it is unable to carry out its desire from the potential into the actual. How would it carry it out? By clothing itself in the bodily limbs, indeed speech and the persistent thought, to the extent of concentrating his attention on the enjoyment of the mundane pleasures. That he never lets happen. That the Beinoni doesn't let happen. He has a desire for all this stuff, but he never lets it take a hold of his thought, speech, and action. As to how to satisfy the lust of his heart, that he won't let the mind think about how to satisfy the lust and all that stuff. Because the brain, this is a key line here, by the way, in Tanya. Because the brain rules over the heart. This is a very important concept in Tanya. As explained in Ra'im the Parshas Pinchas, and this is true because it rules over the heart, the brain rules over the heart by virtue of its innately created nature. That's how it's created. The human being is created that way, that the mind is stronger than the heart. For this is how man is created from birth, that each person may, with the willpower in his brain, restrain himself and control his heart's desires from expressing themselves in action, word, or thought. And he has the power to divert his attention altogether from the craving of his heart towards the completely opposite direction, particularly in the direction of holiness. Let's discuss this for a few minutes.
The brain has also two parts.
What do you mean, two parts?
Part of the brain has to do with the right part of the heart.
I'm not sure. Could be. Now the Rebbe is saying over here a fundamental concept. What?
So the godly soul lives in the brain.
The godly soul is present in the brain and the right part of the heart.
But the human soul is not.
In the left part of the heart. And it goes up to the brain. And it extends up to the brain from the heart. In other words, it's mainly in the heart and then it spreads to the rest of it. But the soul is mainly in the heart, in the brain and in the right side of the heart.
Fair to say that the human soul is more emotional and rational.
Well, think about that. Your human soul is very much that way. Yes,
And the godly soul
it's much more tame, much more
They all
intellectual.
have 7 fruits.
They both have both. Yeah.
But the 3 of the emotional.
The 7, the 3 intellectual and the 7
intellectual
emotional.
of the godly are stronger than the 7.
Stronger than the heart's desires. In other words, at the end of the day, what's the struggle in life? Let's discuss this for a minute.
Is that struggle
Between the mind and the heart.
That's the reason.
That's right. The reason is the neshama. The emotion is the human soul. Because again, why do we call it the animal soul? Because it's a passionate soul. That's what it is. Take an animal. Yeah. Do you own an animal? A pet? You know what a pet is. Pets, people will tell you they have brains, and it's true. Every animal has a brain. It thinks. But an animal's brain is there to serve the heart. That's what the brain is for. It's there to serve the heart. In other words, the main thing of an animal is its passion. Its nature, its instinct. For example, a lion is hungry. It wants lunch. How does it get lunch? The brain kicks in and figures out how to get lunch. As he sees a deer in the far, now he's starting to figuring out exactly how to trounce on that deer. It got brains. This is, it takes tactics. It takes figuring out how to get to that deer. It doesn't hear him. It should know that he's coming. It should trap him from the back, and it should get him and knock him out. That takes brains. The lion has brains. The tiger has brains. but it's only there to serve the passions of the heart. The brain of an animal will never sit down and think about mathematics, philosophy, or any other field of wisdom. It'll never happen. It's not what the brain is meant to do for an animal. The animal's brain is only there to serve, how do I get what my heart wants? How do I acquire my instinctive wants? That's all the brain is there for. So there's brains, but it's an outgrowth of the heart. By a human is the opposite. A human being has a rational brain. The human brain tells the heart what to want. By an animal, it's not that way. The brain doesn't tell the animal's heart what to want. By you and me, our brains are meant to tell us what we should want. Now, does our heart have a desire before our brains kick in? Sure. We're born to want and to perpetuate ourselves, and we have natural desires. We like food, we like a lot of things, even though they're not the most sophisticated, rational things to want, but we want them anyway. The brain is a rational brain.
The soul, that's a rational.
No, he's asking a good question. In other words, the brain by an animal serves the passion. The brain by a human creates the passion. Or we hope it does. In other words, a human being is also an animal. We have an animal soul. What's the animal soul within us? It's fully passionate. And the animal soul wants to go now and buy a donut. Okay? How do you get a donut? It sends a message to the brain, get me a donut. Figure out how to get me a donut. Just like the lion. I want lunch. It sends a message to the brain, figure out how to get lunch. Do humans behave that way? Every single day of the year. You can go out and I can show you millions of humans behaving that way. Their hearts are telling the brain figure out how to get what I want. That's the human soul, the animal soul. But the rational soul is there to tell us, wait a minute, that donut, you don't need that donut.
You mean the rational part of the soul?
The rational soul, yeah.
Correct, but we use that another word.
Talking about the godly soul, yeah. For us, we're talking about the godly soul, yeah. Has a rational soul also, yeah.
So the rational part comes from
He could control his human, his
correct, from
control.
the human soul.
Right.
But we on top of that
Have a godly soul, right.
so we have soul.
Right. So the struggle of life is really between the brain and the heart when you really come down to it. If a guy is struggling, should I steal right now or not? What's really happening in his mind, in his life, in his existence? The heart's telling him, you can use that money, go snatch it away. His brain is telling him, don't you dare, that's wrong. Right? That's what's happening. That's every struggle in life, is between the heart and the mind. Which one is stronger? Which one is stronger?
The brain.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look at life. How many people actually win the struggle?
That doesn't mean it's not.
Oh, so why not? Why doesn't the stronger one win? It's a very good question. It's a very, very good question.
But what's implied here is that the heart can be stronger than the mind, which is why people.
It's not stronger than the mind. It's never stronger than the mind. That's the
Then why
point
does it
that
win?
that's
Why
the
does
exact,
it win? Why does it win more
that's
often than
exactly the question. You know what the answer is? The answer is very simple. It's not very simple, but this is the answer. It's not weak. Your mind is strong. It's stronger than the heart by nature. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you, no. The heart, when you ever watched boxing? You ever watched a boxing ring? You ever saw a boxing ring or a wrestling or whatever it is, yeah? You get two guys, they go into the ring and they fight it out, and the stronger one wins, yeah? What happens if one of them just sits there and does nothing? There's no fight. It's tam gedreit. Of course, in other words, like this. if you have a guy that has muscles like this, and then you have a guy that has no muscles, he's just coming out of yeshiva, he didn't exercise at all, and he goes into the ring. Any chance that he's going to win? Of course not. But what if the guy with the big muscles just sits there and doesn't engage in the fight? He's going to be taken down, even by a weakling. The reason our brains don't win the fight is because they don't get into the fight. That's the reason, really, when you think about it. They don't engage, they're not going into fight. They're bystanders to the heart's desires. They're bystanders to the heart's desires. If they ever did get into the fight, they would always win. That's the end. That's the truth.
Okay. So my question is the following. I agree with you 100%. We have this situation maybe 100 times per day. We are really
all the time.
All the time. So, in order to be a Bengali, you need to always win.
Your brain has to always win.
Or there can be, some kind of trade-off.
There's no trade-off. You have to. The Bengali will never allow his human characteristics or his animal soul take control of his thought, speech, or action. Never allow it. The garments, right? Right.
We just set up a case where you said
it's freezing. Is it only me? It's not cold in here. Let's turn it down. Let's turn it up. It's ridiculous.
The mind is almost stronger. It just chooses not to engage in the fight.
That's exactly right.
Okay. But,
Not enough, at least.
Okay. But we also know that that all of us have experienced inner conflicts, i.e., we're indecisive. Maybe our animal soul is in conflict with our godly soul, and we can't decide what we're going to do. And finally, we decide what we're going to do. Sometimes it's going to be godly. Most of the time, it's not, because. But the point is.
So there was an equal playing field.
But to set up an argument where you're saying it's the intellect doesn't engage in the process, which is why the heart defeats the mind, is to underplay this notion of a conflict.
There's a conflict is there. Sure there's a conflict. There are two fighters, but one is sitting and one is fighting.
But these conflicts can be hard fought.
What?
Conflicts. People can be conflicted to the point where they're made mentally ill.
So when you say internal conflict, the conflict between the mind and the heart, is that what the conflict is? Some of these conflicts are not between the mind and the heart. Some of these conflicts are between one set of understanding, and in other words, it's in the mind itself. You don't know what to decide. Yeah, you have a decision to make. Should I invest in this business or should I not? Should I move to California or should I not? That's not a battle between the mind and the heart. That's sometimes you don't know. Should I make this decision? Should I marry this person or not? That's a major decision you got to make. It's not a question of brain versus heart. The brain itself doesn't know how to decide this. So you're conflicted. There's one part of the brain is telling you this is a wonderful person. Another part of the brain is telling you I'm not sure, and you really don't know. It's the brain that's fighting with itself. That's a different kind of battle. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a battle between the brain and the heart. The heart wants that donut, the brain says the donut's not healthy for you. The heart wants the cigarette, the brain tells it don't. The heart wants to marry this person, the brain tells you this is a bad shidduch for you. That's a different kind of battle.
Sometimes your brain can actually go back to the heart.
If you know what's right and wrong, we're talking about what we know what's right and wrong.
Yeah, but it's a decision.
So why wouldn't the heart know what to decide between right? Of course the heart knows what's. If the heart, in other words, if the brain doesn't know what's right and wrong, that's a different kind of battle. So it's not between the brain and the heart; it's between the brain and the brain. It doesn't know what's right. That's a different problem. But if you know that the heart wants one thing and the brain is certain that this is not good for it, but the heart really wants it, and the brain says, "All right, I'll let it happen." That's not a battle. In other words, the brain sometimes gives in before it even gets into the ring. That's my point. And that usually happens when you lose it.
You familiar with the concept of a gut choice? Where somebody's in conflict, doesn't know what to do, and they go with their gut.
That's okay. That's follow your heart. I don't know. I'm not sure. That's what he just said.
Rabbi, I have a question. Suppose
Is that not the case?
What?
Do that? How do you
good or bad. Because sometimes you can have disposition, not just good and bad.
Right.
But suppose Rabbi, that all life was one day, only one day.
These are
And you wouldn't-
decisions, godly or not godly. That's what you got to do.
No.
That's what the
That's good or bad.
I'm gonna give you an example. Let's say,
there's either godly holiness or.
let's say somebody
not.
tells you you have to go this direction, you're gonna be great, and you have all the reasoning behind it, but you don't feel like it's the right thing to do.
Don't do it.
So that's.
Why don't you feel? One second. Why don't you feel?
Because you don't feel.
Because you're not convinced.
You're not, you
So again, both of those concepts are in the brain. It's not a heart thing. That's a brain thing. If you're not convinced, it means your brain is not convinced. If your brain is convinced and your heart just doesn't want to do it because it's lazy, what?
An expression that tells me follow your heart comes from. You believe in that? And where is that?
Follow your heart?
Yeah. With that, I think
That means when the brain doesn't know, then you follow your heart.
But it's very different. This is not sin.
But when your brain knows that this is right and your heart wants something else, then it's not a don't follow the heart. Please. That would be terrible if you follow the heart. If the brain knows what's right and your heart is just interested in something else, we should not follow the heart.
so. Is it fair to say that the reason why we don't find enough is because the mind is not?
It's not engaging to begin with.
No, but the reason being that it's not educated or trained enough.
That's how I feel.
I don't think so.
I think
No.
there's a lot of times where if you don't know like what we're learning, and you don't know what godliness is and what godliness isn't, you know how many
Forget about godliness. What does this have to do with godliness?
That's what I thought all.
Not necessarily. It's between good and right, between right and wrong.
That's godliness.
Good, but even the uneducated person in Torah knows right from wrong. He knows that smoking is bad for him.
Okay.
He doesn't need to have a rabbi to tell him
The
that.
heart and mind don't always have to be in conflict. I mean,
They don't?
Obviously, the object here is to get to the point where you're unifying.
But many times it is in conflict. Many times it is in conflict.
Yes.
And that's why he's saying most people that sin and are not living
When I stay up late, watch TV.
people are sinning, they're not living the lifestyle that is expected of them from a spiritual standpoint. They keep losing the battle. Why do they keep losing the battle? If the brain knows this is right, the heart is not in the mood, this is stronger than this, why is this not overpowering this? What's going on? The answer is that this is not engaging in the fight. It's not putting up a fight.
So it's fair to say the heart is always engaged, but the mind.
The mind is lazy. Absolutely correct.
But for the Benjamin, it's not like that.
It's not like that. And that's why he always wins. That's why he always wins. It's not easy. It's not easy, but he always wins. It's not easy. In other words, what's not easy? The hard part is to get the brain into the ring. That's the hard part. Once it's in the ring, it's going to win. That's the bottom line. That's what the Alter Rebbe is saying over here. The battle and the struggle of life is not what happens in the ring. You'll always win if you both are in the ring equally. The battle of life is to get the brain into the battle. To get it to fight the heart. The problem is the brain is so lazy. We're not really interested in fighting. I'm quite okay with my heart winning this. You understand? But if you really want to win this, you will win it. That's the nature of the heart, of the brain. That's the chiddush. That's a great novelty of the Alter Rebbe over here, by the way. Yeah.
I have a question. Suppose that let's see whole life one day, and you want to be a Benjamin. So you wake up in the morning, you think ahead, you do everything good, you do everything correct. So everything was good. You take a car and you go with your car, and someone try to and you say, "This is the son of you." Again,
Yeah.
this is a moment. So with this moment, when you crush a person that is not good, that is bad, so you're not a Benjamin anymore. And what you did.
So let me explain to you.
You know what I mean? So
I'm going to answer your question.
Nice things. Good,
I'm going to answer your
bad,
question.
good.
I'm going to answer your question. A person that when someone cuts him off says, "This guy's a son of a this," yeah. He said that word many, many times before that moment. No one is going to flippantly say such a curse word if he doesn't use that quite often. It won't come out of him by what do you call, subconsciously. It won't just happen if you're not, you didn't accustom yourself to say such curse words when you're, willingly. So this is a language that's pretty much familiar with you, but then you try, you're doing everything good that day, and boom, something happened, you flip. No one flips if they're not, this is not something, if you don't have that kind of language at your tongue, it's not going to come out from you when you're caught off guard. I think so. I'm pretty sure of that. A person that never curses is not going to curse when someone cuts him off, and he's going to get lost himself, and suddenly a curse word comes out of his mouth. Doesn't usually happen. You got to accustom yourself to using such language in order to happen to you subconsciously.
So what about stopping cursing?
Stopping to curse?
A person who's used to cursing and then stops cursing.
Okay, that's good.
Is their mind actively engaged in the process of not cursing, or is it because their life has changed and their general state has changed, and so they're not so quick to anger and thus curse?
In other words,
how does that?
this is a good example. Person that cursed, used language, foul language. But then he decides, I'm not using foul language. I'm elevating myself. I'm becoming more of a.
But does it decide? Is this a permanent choice to stop cursing?
Yes, it has
or
to be.
Stopping cursing a reaction or a product of their general change of life?
It could be, but sometimes it could be, you zero in on one thing. But it's definitely a lot, usually when people stop cursing, they try to develop a more refined speech. That can happen. And it takes a couple of years, and that person is no longer going to curse. And when I see that person, I say, no, cursing is not part of his repertoire anymore. That's it. It's out of his mind, out of his conscience, not part of his language anymore. That's it. It's the Beinoni. He's a Beinoni with cursing. With regard to cursing. He's not going to do it again. And I can look at him and say, no, this person is never going to curse again. But again, back to the heart and the mind. Our minds are more stronger than our heart. By nature, that's just the way we're born. But so when there's a battle between them, the brain will always win. But the hard thing is to get the brain to battle the heart. That's the hard thing about life. That's the challenge in life.
Great statement. That's the statement that when I first started learning psychology, I lived on for a while. The biggest battle of life is between your heart and your mind. It's like the right thing, but it's not. It's not.
No, the battle is to get the mind to engage and to decide to battle.
What I'm saying is now my thought process is now a little different based on that statement.
Yeah, it's good.
No, it's very important because I learned it before but I was in a point in my life where I said, who wins?
Who is what?
If I have feelings or something, but my mind tells me otherwise, who do I follow?
You should always follow your mind. If it's a rational decision.
You have to follow your mind.
Sure. If your mind is certain, it's just that your heart is not in the mood, you absolutely should follow your mind.
If you're not certain,
That's a different thing. Then get help from someone else. Then consult. If you can't consult, then sometimes you're left to making the decision yourself. That's when you can say, follow your heart.
That's a confidence builder, I gotta tell you. Just that statement. Like thinking about this battle of life.
but I will tell
Do I do
you,
the right thing? Do I do the right
in
thing?
the majority of people who think that their heart
Thank
is the one that drives.
That what?
The heart is the driver.
Is the driver or the stronger?
I mean, if you're in a dilemma, most of the people will say, follow your heart.
Follow your heart against your brain? Who's going to say that? Follow your heart when your brain says it, when your brain knows that this is the right course of action. Your heart wants to do something else, you should follow your heart. What is that? Why? Why would this anyone say
I'm
that?
not saying it's the right.
No, why would anyone even say
A
that?
lot of people will think that way.
I can't imagine a rational person would say that the rational thing is to go right and the passionate thing is to go left. You should follow your heart. Who's going to ever say that?
No, the problem is that some people are not that strong or they don't have enough faith.
So they're not saying. They're saying, unfortunately, I followed my heart. They're not going to say you should follow your heart.
Let me give you,
Related to love, mostly.
yeah, let me give you a very practical example.
I think it's not important. What the point is, when do you say follow your heart? When your brain can't decide. That's when you should follow your heart. And then only if you have no one to consult with. You should consult and try to get to the bottom of it. But if you can't, then the decision's left to you. Follow your heart. Okay, that makes sense. But if your mind knows the right course and your brain doesn't want it, your heart doesn't want to do it, and only a moron would say follow your heart. That's ridiculous.
Let me give you a practical example, because I think it's important to put this in practice. Your son falls in love with a thing,
Yeah.
and he's in love, and he's happy with her, whatever, it's not like this.
He's happy with her, or you're happy with her?
He's happy with
He's
it.
happy with her.
Better
And,
be good.
yeah, and she doesn't want to convert.
Yeah.
Yeah, she doesn't want to convert. So that's a very difficult thing. That
It's a difficult battle.
It's a very difficult
For
battle.
who?
For
For the boy, for this, yeah.
You, not what
For the boy, no?
the boy.
Is it a difficult battle for him?
The minute the mind enters
Is he interested in battling this? In other words, is he saying, I really, really shouldn't do this, but it's hard for me to say no? Is that what's going on here?
So you're the father, of course, I know you answer most of people. No. You want to be happy, or you want to have this fight? Be unhappy for what?
Okay, so you just said something that I want to understand. Are you convinced that marrying that marriage is not good for him?
as the father.
Forget about the father. You're not convinced.
No,
So why would you turn him away from it?
because it's not right.
If it's not right, why aren't you convinced that you shouldn't do it?
Because it's gonna make him happy, even though it's not.
When if something is not right, it will never make him happy.
No, I brought it, that's not true.
That is true. That is true. It's not true happiness when something is not right. If you know something is not right, how could you be happy with doing what's not right? How could a human being for real truly be happy when he knows he's doing something that's not
I
right?
have friends that married boys, and they're very happy.
Because they don't think it's wrong. But if they really thought it was not right,
The girl never converted.
so they know it's wrong.
Yeah,
And they're not. So there's no. It's wrong for you, not for them. They don't think it's wrong, probably.
It's wrong for them, but they're happy with their marriage. They're happy with the girl.
Yeah.
They know it's wrong. But
Yeah.
Their emotions actually overcome their logic.
That's what it is. Their emotion is overcoming their logic. How long? 1 second. How long does such a life? When does that catch up with you? When you know for real that you're doing something that's not right for you, but you're just getting caught up with the emotion of it, well, that's going to come back to haunt you one day. That's not going to last forever.
How?
What do you mean how? Unless you're not present. You're not realistic with yourself. Unless you don't really think it's not such a problem. In other words, you don't really think it's such a problem. That's what it is. They don't think it's such a problem. Yeah, it's not right for my grandfather, but for me it's okay. That's what they think. If they really thought it was wrong, they wouldn't be happy long term.
100% true.
You can't. How could you be happy with something that you know is wrong?
So let's say.
If you have a soul, if you're a mensch, you're a normal person.
A lot of rabbis convert, people to marry Jews.
If they convert, they convert.
They know it's wrong, but they do.
Why is it wrong?
Because 80% of the time, it's not a true conversion.
So the rabbi shouldn't do it. Then the rabbi is wrong.
But they still do it.
That's wrong.
And they
You're
know
right.
the statistics.
Because I don't know why they do it. You got to ask them. It's wrong for them to do it. You're right. That's very wrong.
So the father, let's say they don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care, but the father thinks it's wrong. What are you gonna do?
What I'm going to try to convince the boy not to do it.
You cannot do it.
What am I supposed to do? And when I know for him to, when there's a lot of decisions children make that I know are wrong, and I don't have the power to change their mind. What am I supposed to do? I don't always have the power. It's a tragedy. I feel bad, but it is what it is. My kids don't follow everything I tell them. So wake up. Good morning, America.
Some father say you're not my son.
What?
Some parents will say,
If they marry out.
yeah, you're
Okay.
not my son. You think that's right? I mean, I think it's more important to, that's a battle between your heart and your mind.
What?
What I'm telling you, the example I'm telling you.
I don't think it is.
No?
What is a battle between your mind and your heart?
To say what you're saying, it's not a battle.
What's the what for who? For I didn't follow
We
that.
talk about the couple.
Yeah.
I don't think it's wrong.
They don't think it's wrong. So there's no battle.
They're married.
There's no battle.
So,
No, they-
what about the father?
But they're not getting engaged. They're not engaging in the battle. That's it.
Their parents. Should
Yeah.
engage in battle and accept
They should
it.
try to convince their son not to do it.
Doesn't
Sure.
happen.
They should try harder. If they can't, they can. What are they supposed to do? If they can't convince them, they can't convince them.
It's up to you. If you want to say to your kids, you're not my kid anymore, that's up to you. That's how strong.
Is that the question? Should you tell your kid?
If you think it's
He wants to know
wrong,
if that's a battle.
The question is,
that's a very
tell
bad
me what
balance
you try to
between
do.
your relationship with your son or what is right or wrong. Basically, your relationship between God and you and
You can't
your son.
control that.
A lot of that depends on circumstance. A lot of that depends on circumstance. Yeah.
Remember the
In other words, if your son wasn't educated in the ways of Torah, not you, I'm saying a person's son wasn't educated in the ways of Torah, and he's not living a Torah life, you shouldn't disown him. No. What do you want from him? Did your father educate him properly? You're going to go disown him when you're at fault for him doing what he's doing? It's ridiculous. You should try. You should cry. You should be very upset about it. But it's not his fault. So you should disown him. I don't think. But if someone did, and back in the day, if a kid went and married out, the father would sit shiva for him. Did you know that? They would sit shiva. As if he died. But that was in a time where the kid knew better, and he just broke away, and he did. It's a different situation. It's not. Yeah. Let's go further. Yeah. Thus it is written, then I saw that wisdom excels folly, as light excelleth darkness. This means, this is a verse from King Solomon, I believe, in Ecclesiastes, yeah. This means that just as light has a superiority, power, and dominion over darkness, so that a little physical light banishes a great deal of darkness, light is stronger than darkness, which is herewith inevitably superseded. When you bring on a light into a pitch dark room, it will chase away the darkness, no question about it. It's stronger than darkness. As a matter of course and necessity, so is much foolishness of the klipa and sitra achra, as indeed our sages say, a man does not sin unless the spirit of folly enters into him, inevitably driven away by the wisdom that is in the divine soul in the brain. Just like light is stronger than darkness, the brain, the wisdom of the brain is stronger than the desires of the heart. Let's read that again. This means, the third line of that paragraph, this means that just as light has a superiority, power, and dominion over darkness, so that a little physical light banishes a great deal of darkness, which is herewith inevitably superseded. As a matter of course and necessity, so is much foolishness of the klipa and sitra achra. What's foolishness? When a person wants to sin, that's foolishness. And he says that in the parentheses. As indeed our sages say, a man does not sin unless the spirit of folly enters into him. So that spirit of foolishness inevitably is driven away by the wisdom that is in the divine soul in the brain. whose desire is to rule alone in the city and to pervade the whole body in the manner already mentioned, by means of her 3 garments, namely thought, speech, and the act of the 613 commandments of the Torah, as explained earlier. Nevertheless, he says, you have a question?
No, that answers a lot of questions.
Yeah. Nevertheless, such a person is not deemed a tzaddik at all, because the superiority which the light of the divine soul possesses over the darkness and foolishness of the klippah, wherewith the latter is expelled forthwith, exists only in the aforementioned 3 garments, but does not extend to its very essence and being in the relation to those of the klippah. It doesn't have the power to kick out the soul, to entirely transform the soul. It can make sure that the soul doesn't get into the body or take control of the body, but it can't control the soul itself. The soul itself is going to want to have what it wants. See, the tzaddik, human soul. The tzaddik transformed the human soul. Doesn't even want anything wrong. The Beinoni has not transformed the human soul. It wants a lot of bad things. It's just that it will never let it take control of the thought, speech, and action. But does not extend.
All the best people I know are here,
Are where?
are in this place.
In which place?
The place where they have all kinds of desires or interests,
Right.
which are of the animal soul.
Everyone has that,
Right.
except for the tzaddik.
But in the real world, where we meet real people every day, the people you recognize as people of quality are the people who are most efficient, if you want to call it that, at not translating their animal soul desires into the actions, into the manifestations of the physical world. And you see them do it, and you see them handle it, and you can see that they're not suffering too much in the process, they're not too conflicted, but they are balanced, and they don't have an extreme, they don't act out in extreme fashion, and you admire them. You admire their discipline.
That you are aware.
Well, I don't know what kind of people they're up to in the closet.
No.
But the way they conduct themselves in the world, right? Knowing my own feelings and actions and how I might act, it's clear that these people are people of quality, and that's kind of where I see.
I think it's hard to read, honestly. I don't see it that easy. Think about your days. You get to meet the guy who's like rain and meditation.
It's not really quality. It's not really, I don't think it's what he's saying. It's quality.
Guys, gentlemen, ladies, it's late. It's, what is it now? It's 9:30 already. Let's take it, let's cut it here. And next week we'll finish chapter 12. You know what?
This is the next part.
What? The human blood soul is what makes your body alive, yeah, in the blood. But that's the human soul, and then the human soul is in the blood, yeah. Yeah.